name is David Botten. I am the owner of elementeliquids. In 2008, my cousin visited me. I was living in California and I was making television commercials, and he visited me. And with him, he had brought me one of the first ever made e-cigarettes. And I remember him telling me, "This is the future." And I said, "Okay, what is this?" And it was a metal, all metal, and it was terrible, and it didn't work that well. And that was the first time I ever saw an e-cigarette. Subsequently, my family and him, he was my cousin, we ended up opening up a publicly traded company, the first publicly traded company with e-cigarettes in 2008. And then in 2014, I then understood where the market was going, and we opened up Alemany Liquid, which was an American manufactured e-liquid. At that point, China was really the only people making it, and they didn't have the best quality, or they didn't have the best reputation of quality. That was really the truth. The reputation wasn't good. And so there was a very big opening for American made e-liquids, especially in America. You know, with Element, what we had noticed is that I remember we came to shows here in the UK at the NEC here before there was any vape shows. So there was the Spring Fair and stuff like that. What we noticed is that the Chinese were white labeling products, but then they started to come to the show. And I remember having a very big conversation saying there's only gonna be time before the Chinese actually starts brand. Now we see Aspire and Smok, these are all Chinese brands, but back then they were strictly a white labeling companies, these Chinese companies. I realized that. What I also realized is that in America, we could make liquid and that nobody would be able to emulate my product. So I was selling at Vapor Corp and stuff, the publicly traded company, we were selling Chinese products, and we realized that everybody was selling those products. So what product could we make that we would have the IP on was liquid. And those were days pre-high VG. Alemany Liquid was the first high VG liquid in the European market. You know, people weren't used to, when we came with flavor, people were not used to these kind of explosions of flavors. Pink lemonade, key lime cookie, watermelon chill. People just went crazy. Coupled with, we were the first high VG, we had symbols of the dripper on our logo, and that became very big. The dripping became very big, and there was our logo with the dripper. So I think there was probably 6 months where anybody who had a dripper only dripped Alemany Liquid. And so that was a great thing, of course. I gotta be honest, one thing that I just feel really, when I think about Element, and I think that the industry thinks about Element, I really believe that everyone looks at us as the most forward-thinking company in the industry. We introduced the first Subohm. We introduced the first salt. We brought in the first pod system. I think that what we show people is what is coming. And again, even at this show, we're the first company to offer a 5 milligram nicotine salt, the first sub-ohm salt in the industry. That is for somebody who got off cigarettes, used nicotine to get off cigarettes. Now they want to get off even the vape. Not everybody wants to get off vaping. You know, nicotine in itself hasn't been proven to be a killer, right? How you take nicotine can be a problem, like through a combustible product. But through vaping, it's a little bit cleaner, you know, X amount % healthier. So the Subohm is for people who want to continue that voyage of being able to get off cigarettes, but want to have a much smoother experience. So, you know, we're going to focus on the people that are using our products, understand their voyage, which is part of the history and part of all of these surveys that we take, and just kind of continue to help them in their journey, in their experience. I would say that education is key. We see now with the scare from America that people are so scared to vape and this and that. At the end of the day, I think education is key. I think that when somebody comes to this show, they start to understand that we're not companies that are brewing in a bathroom, okay? There are real legitimate companies here making millions of dollars, putting millions of dollars into research, and this is a real industry. I had a cousin of mine come over, he's an older gentleman, and when he came here, he was just blown away. So I think that when someone comes here, they start to understand, hey, this is a real industry, not what people have been hearing like, oh, it's gonna kill you, it's not regulated. There are real businessmen here, there are companies who care about people, and it's a real business and it's a real product, and it can help people get off combustible cigarettes, which is the main goal.